You've mentioned OxyContin a couple of times. How did you get introduced to it?
Just, I'd probably taken it before with the buddy who'd given me pills, but it was up at, I want to say college, up at Utah State when I graduated, and I wanted to be a vet, you know, being a cowboy. I was trying to go up to Utah State and do that. I wanted to be a equine veterinarian and work on racehorses. That was my goal. And I started using OxyContin up there first year, and at this time I started a construction company, and I'm not sure if the timeline is exact, but it doesn't really matter. But OxyContin was the best thing that ever happened to me at that time in my life, because it got me to all those things we talked about. It let go of the anxiety. I could go to class. I could do things. It worked good for 4 months, and then it ripped everything out from my life, you know. And so that's the one drug that really took me down fast and hard. And then still not understanding that I was an addict, because that was a bad word to me, or an alcoholic. It took going to rehab to learn about addiction, you know, and that was tough though. But I used to watch my friends. I had a buddy who went to treatment, and I was so jealous of him that he got to go to treatment, because I was just stuck in this cycle of buying drugs, and I just didn't know what was wrong with me. And then I remember being jealous when he said I'd go into rehab tomorrow, because I bought pills off him. And I was like, I want to go get help, you know, but I didn't know how to at that point. And my sister had a huge impact on getting me help. So
on the podcast, people usually describe their rock bottom.
Okay.
What does yours look like?
Oh man, there's been a couple. You know, the first time I ever went to treatment, I was 24 years old, and that was when I pawned everything. My family I stole my sister's wakeboards. Everything I owned of value was in a pawn shop. My company, I started a construction company at that time and couldn't even open a checking account. Went to Mesquite to gamble and play, you know, going down to a rodeo, and lost thousands of dollars. And at that time, my brother was employing me as well. I stole money from his company. And finally, when I got back, they had a meeting at my sister's dance studio that you know about. Upstairs. There was a whole group of my family up there, basically an intervention. And my grandpa was there, all my family was there, and it was, what's wrong with you, Jared? What's wrong with you? You know, and I was like, nothing's wrong with me. You know, what's wrong with you guys? And finally, we were all yelling back and forth, and my sister Kim walks upstairs, and she just says, Jared, do you need help? And that was kind of like the first time I was like, somebody came at me with a little different approach, a softer approach. And I don't know if I was just ready at that time, but it was the right words at the right time and the right tone. And I just broke down and I said, yes, you know, and that day I was in treatment 3 days later. You know, I didn't stay sober for more than 2 years, but that's when I was introduced to a program of recovery. And I finally tasted a life that I thought could be had, you know, and it was beautiful. I loved going to rehab. I loved learning about myself and what was wrong with me. And that lasted for almost 2 years. And then my grandpa died, and I kind of went back out at that point.
You know, sometimes sort of in a superficial joking manner, you meet somebody cool and you say, oh, we really vibed. You use that term, we vibe with each other, that kind of thing. But I think there is something to that. And I think a lot of times people have an experience like you just described, where I would call it pre-conscious awareness. You're not really aware. You're not really thinking the words, I need help. But it's sort of back there. It's just kind of, it's on a wavelength, you know. And when your sister came in with that soft approach and said, you need help, I think that speaks to that. And it brings it from pre-conscious to conscious awareness. And it feels different. Like you said, all of a sudden it was like, sometimes we call that, you know, an epiphany or insight, but it's when those two vibes connect and you're on the same wavelength for a moment, it can do powerful things. And that's why sometimes families are smart to, your family's great for loving you enough to all meet there and try to have an intervention. But sometimes families would benefit from having somebody help them, because you're more like, you know, an interventionist to help create that connection. Because if you can connect with the addict on their wavelength, if you can bring their pre-consciousness up to their awareness and hit that vibe, and because you knew somewhere inside of you, you're like, something's wrong, I need help. But when people are aggressive, what do? We push back.
Oh yeah, walls come up.
Yeah, so that's cool.
I'm curious about the 2 years of sobriety you had, and you said you got a taste of what life could be.
Yeah, I did. It was hard. I was ready when I went into treatment. When my up in Park City, it was inpatient 60 days. I was all in. I wanted to learn about what was wrong with me. That's when I was introduced to the 12 steps. I was introduced to the disease model. I was introduced to a lot of things that finally I was like, oh, this is what's wrong with me. There's something.
This is why I do what I do.
There's stuff behind this. There's consequences and reasons. But so I did 60 days inpatient, did 90 days outpatient, driving to Park City 4 times a night. Now I couldn't afford it because of gas prices. But I was willing to do whatever. And honestly, first time I went to rehab, I graduated, had a lifetime guarantee scholarship, whatever you call it. And that was the first thing that I was proud of that I graduated from. My whole family was there, and I've graduated from 2 rehabs. And so those are my proudest days of my life, and I joke about it, but it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.